Welcome back, guys. So today what we're going to talk about is cellular respiration. And cellular respiration takes place in the cell, and respiration, it sounds like respirar in español, right? So, and that just means to breathe, all right? And so when you breathe, you always think of oxygen. So cellular respiration, the big thing is, the big concept is that it's the process that kind of recharges our batteries. All right, and so in our cells we have molecules that kind of work like batteries. Okay, and when this battery is supercharged, like charged all the way, we call that ATP. When we use that energy, when we use that battery, okay, it gets uncharged, just like your phone. When you use it, your phone loses charge, right? Okay, when it loses its charge, we call that molecule ADP. Okay, so that's what cellular respiration does. It recharges our batteries. Okay, and so the whole point is we want to make more of this ATP. All right, now how does this happen? Well, your body needs a couple things to recharge your battery, okay? So the first thing it's gonna need glucose. Remember, glucose is a molecule, all right? Okay, it's like this. It's a molecule that looks like this. It's a carbohydrate. Okay, we built it in class many times, right? And so your body needs this. How does your body get it? Well, we eat glucose, okay? Then it's also going to need 6 molecules of oxygen, okay? And so when we're talking about oxygen, we're talking about that, O2. So we're gonna need 6 of these. And what your body does is it breaks the bonds from these molecules, and it uses the energy that's stored in these bonds to recharge your batteries, okay? And so at the end of it, okay, when these molecules are broken, what we are left with is the byproducts, okay, which is CO2, 6 molecules of CO2, 6 molecules of water. And what's going to happen is for every 1 molecule of glucose that we break up, your body is going to recharge 36 ATP molecules, okay? 36, all right? And so this right here, this process is called cellular respiration. All right, okay? And so you got to keep that in mind. Remember in class we said that these are the reactants and these are the products. All right? And so this chemical reaction allows us to make our ATP, all right? And so let's keep that in mind, all right? Now, the next thing is, okay, where does this reaction take place? Well, it takes place in this organelle that kind of looks like this. Like that. This is the mitochondria. Okay? And so the mitochondria, what it does, it literally takes in the glucose that you eat. All right? So the glucose that we eat, it goes into our blood, okay? And then in our blood, it goes to our cells, and it goes into our cells, and then it goes into our mitochondria, okay? The 6 O2s, they go in, okay, into our mitochondria. And what ends up coming out, okay, is the 6 CO2s, water molecules, and our ATP, 36 to be exact, every time 1 glucose molecule comes in, okay? And also remember, the 36 ADP, which is basically the batteries that have been used up, the uncharged batteries, they also go in because these are the batteries that are going to get recharged. And then when those batteries get recharged, they get a new name called ATP. And so then we'll show the batteries, kind of think of it like they're fully charged. Okay, and this process is called cellular respiration. It recharges our batteries, okay? So every time the cells use energy, they use their ATP. The batteries get uncharged. Those batteries go to your mitochondria, okay? And the mitochondria uses the energy in glucose and transfers that energy into your molecular batteries. Think of these as molecular batteries. All right, okay, so we have to, okay, charge our batteries, and the only way, and where do we get our energy? From the bonds that hold these molecules together. All right, and oxygen is also kind of like fuel to get this process going, okay? And the CO2, think of it like our exhaust, we breathe it out, okay? And these molecules are so tiny, okay, they're insignificant, but they're part of the reaction, okay? So keep that in mind. This is cellular respiration. All right, guys. So now we want to talk about photosynthesis. Photo meaning light, synthesis means to make. So in photosynthesis, what we're using is we're using light to make glucose. That's the concept there, okay? So, and where does this happen? Okay, it happens in plants. So plants use the light to make glucose, and that process is called photosynthesis. Because remember, a plant is basically almost all glucose, and these glucose molecules, like these, get connected to form these huge chains of glucose called polysaccharides, and these polysaccharides start building the walls of the cell, of the plant cells, and that's how they grow and that's how they get bigger. So more glucose, the plants grow, then we start eating plants, and that's how we get our glucose, and so forth, right? And so now, how does this process look like, okay? So the first thing that you're going to need is, remember, okay, here's a plant, all right? And you guys know plants need sunlight. Why? Because they're going to need it for energy, okay, so that they can make their glucose, all right? So now, once the plant has light, all right, it's going to use the CO2 that's in the atmosphere, 6 to be exact, okay? So there's CO2 all over this place, okay, in the air, CO2. Okay, what does CO2 look like? Okay, it looks like this, all right? And so it's going to use 6 CO2s and 6 water molecules, okay? And it's going to use the energy from the sun to break these molecules, okay? Here are the water molecules, okay, that we built in class, right? And so it's going to use 6 of these, and it's going to turn those molecules, it's going to break those molecules and turn it into this. This is glucose, okay? Now, the byproduct is, because when you have all these molecules, okay, not all of those are going to be used to build it. So what's left over is going to be turned into 6O2, because you're going to have leftover oxygen, and those oxygens get turned into this, right? And so that's why plants release oxygen, because when they're done building their glucose, the atoms are left over are a bunch of oxygen atoms, and those oxygen atoms come together to form these O2 molecules, and then the plant lets go of O2, and that's how O2 gets in the air, that's how, you know, we're able to get the O2 that we need, because plants make it. All right, now remember, these are called the reactants, These are called the products. Okay, and this whole process is called photosynthesis. Because remember, they're using the light, right, as energy to break these molecules and use the atoms to make glucose, and the leftover atoms get turned into O2 molecules, okay? And now the plant uses all the glucose. Now the plant is making all the glucose that it needs. Now, where does this happen, okay? Now, remember, this happens in plant cells. Plant cells. All right, okay, so photosynthesis happens in plant cells, and plant cells have this special cell wall, so we're going to draw it here. And so when we did our microscope lab, you guys were able to see the cell wall. Okay, so this is the cell wall. Okay, and then this black line represents the cell membrane. Okay, and there's this organelle that you guys were able to see under the microscope. Okay, it's called a chloroplast. So what you guys have to imagine is, you guys have to imagine that the CO2, the 6CO2, okay, goes into the cell, into the chloroplast. Okay, the 6 water molecules also are going to go into the plant cell, into the chloroplast. And what the chloroplast is going to do is it's going to spit out the glucose, 1 molecule of glucose for every 6 CO2 molecules, right? Because think about it. Here's glucose, and it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 carbons. So it's going to need 6 CO2s. So it has its 6 carbons, okay? It also has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 oxygens, okay? And so notice, okay, here there's going to be 12 plus another 6. There's way more oxygen you need. So that's why some of the exhaust basically is going to be the 6 O2s. All right, and so that's what happens inside plants. And if you remember in the lab, the microscope lab, you saw a lot of chloroplasts. So plants actually have tons of chloroplasts because they need to make tons of glucose, okay? Lots and lots of glucose, because plants are basically just, okay, made up of a bunch of glucose, all right? And so all these chloroplasts are just like little factories, okay, that make this very special molecule, okay, called glucose, all right? And that glucose is used to build all the different parts of the cell, okay, so that the cell can stay sturdy and alive and grow, all right? And so therefore it makes kind of sense when we eat plant, okay, that's how we get our glucose as well, all right? So, and so keep that in mind. All right, remember, photosynthesis is using light to make glucose. What the plant needs, it's CO2, so it has carbon, okay? It needs the 6 water molecules, so it has all the hydrogen and oxygen it needs, okay, to build glucose. Once glucose is built, the leftover oxygen gets put together into those molecules, and that gets let out from the leaves, and it goes into our atmosphere, so that we can use it for our reaction, which that is really important, which we talked about in another video, which is cellular respiration. All right, so hope this helps. Review it, know it, memorize this reaction, and see you next time. Hi, welcome back, guys. So today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about nitrogen fixation, okay? And nitrogen fixation is a very important process that happens in our ecosystems so that plants can use the nitrogen that's in the air. So let's talk about it, okay? So first you have to imagine, okay, that we have our ecosystem, we have the sun, right? Okay, and there's, soil. All right, okay, and in the atmosphere, there's a bunch of gases like CO2, O2, okay, and one very important gas is N2, all right? There's actually tons of N2 in our atmosphere, okay, and that molecule looks like this. All right, now, okay, two nitrogen atoms connected together, okay? Now, the crazy thing is that N2, okay, can't be used, all right? Living things can't use this molecule in this way. So what happens is there's these little bacteria in the soil, okay? And what they do is they take, so let's imagine this is one of the bacteria, okay? So that I blew it up, right? And it has DNA inside of it, and that's it. Okay, and so now what's going to happen is the N2 that's in the atmosphere, the bacteria kind of grab it and then take it in. And what they're going to do inside is they're going to spit out and turn this N2 into NH3, which is called ammonia. Right? And so these little bacteria, think of them like they're just these little factories that are producing NH3. Okay, so they're spitting out NH3, okay? But in order to do that, okay, remember, this is what NH3 looks like. So what they're doing is this goes in, this comes out. This goes in, this comes out. And now that there's NH3 in the soil, okay, the plants, okay, now can use this NH3. So the NH3 actually goes, okay, and into the roots of the plants, right? And the plants use the nitrogen, okay, in the molecule to make the amino acids that they need. And so remember, what did an amino acid look like? Amino acids. Okay? Remember, they all look like this. They had carbon, they had a carboxyl group, they had this, they have a hydrogen, and then they have the R group. And remember, all amino acids have nitrogen. And so the plant needs the NH3 to make its amino acids. And now that it has its amino acids, it can make proteins, okay? And these proteins are going to keep the plant cells alive. Okay? So that's what they do. So that's why the plants need the NH3 so that, okay, the NH3, they can use the nitrogen to make their amino acids. Now that they made their amino acids, they can make their proteins, and those proteins are going to keep those plant cells alive, okay? And that's why the plant is going to be able to grow, because now it has the nitrogen that it needs to make its proteins to keep their cells alive, okay? And without this process, this concept of this reaction called nitrogen fixation, all right, okay, which basically is we're taking N2 and we're fixing it so it's in a form that plants can use, and now that we fixed it, now plants can use it to make its amino acids. The amino acids get they get connected together to form proteins, and the proteins now do special jobs inside the cells that keep the plant cells alive, okay? And so without N2, the plants wouldn't have the nitrogen they need to stay alive, okay, and make the amino acids that they need. So hopefully this helps. Okay, this is nitrogen fixation, turning N2 into NH3, and it happens in the bacteria cell. All right? Okay, have fun studying. See you next time.